Well, Keith Wyche, he's practicing is a practicing C-suite executive, speaker, and author who helps companies successfully navigate transition, rapid growth, and change. Keith Wyche and Associates represents the best of the best in the DE&I thought leadership space. And we welcome this morning Keith Wyche. Good morning, Keith Wyche.
Good morning, Stacy. So glad to be on your show today.
Well, we are certainly thrilled to have you. This is DE&I, obviously, is always on the minds of certainly the viewers of the Black Press of America, and certainly our publishers and our leaders in the National Newspaper Publishers Association. So tell us, you say nothing really has changed. Talk about where we're at as far as corporate America and DEI. Then I want to talk about your book.
Oh, great. It's really interesting. Usually I start this conversation, Stacy, with kind of explaining DE&I. And the reason I say that is that too often they get lumped together. And I'm a simple guy. And so the way I define it is diversity means you get invited to the party. Inclusion means that you're offered and welcomed at the table. You get a welcome seat at the table. You're valued, you're heard, you're respected, you're appreciated. But equity says that you get the same menu of opportunity and promotion as anyone else. And the challenge is if you only focus on diversity, that's great, but you don't get inclusion. And you'll come to the party hungry and you'll leave hungry if you don't get the same meals of opportunity of equity. And one of the challenges for DEI, particularly for Black and brown people, is the focus stops at diversity, which usually means recruiting. And it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and you say that you believe that commitment from the executive office is critical to the long-term success of the strategic DE&I plan. Explain that a little bit further.
Yeah, so typically these types of initiatives don't take root unless you have senior leader, executive leadership support and accountability. And so if you don't have that, it's very difficult to have these initiatives take traction inside the organization. However, what I found over the years is it's one thing to have the CEO and the board support DEI, but if the middle management, those folks who manage the day-to-day operation and the day-to-day people, those folks who are doing the promoting and the hiring, if they don't embrace a culture of inclusiveness in DEI, those initiatives never get as far as they could get.
Yeah, and I want you to, if you will, respond. James Wright, he's a fantastic reporter at the Washington Informer newspaper. He writes in, he says, tokenism is rampant in corporate America. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it really can be a situation where I was with the company and I was talking about executive leadership. And here's what I mean. They said, hey, 26% of our employers, our employees are Black and African American. I said, great, but let me see where are they in the organization? And surprisingly, the bulk of them were at entry-level positions. And as you moved up, there were very few. And typically what they'll do is, there's a part of my book I write that, they'll say, well, I have Jamal, I have Andre, I have Keisha. But, again, those are just, tokens. And not saying that those people aren't impactful and making change. But if you just hang your hat on, here's one or two folks, that's really not moving the needle whatsoever.
Yeah. And speaking of your book, the new book just came out. Diversity is Not Enough, a roadmap to recruit, develop, and promote Black leaders in America. Talk about these real actionable steps for those who are serious about DE&I.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I talk about is companies have to admit that their DEI program is an ugly baby. I jokingly say there are no ugly babies, but I will tell you that, it starts with truth telling. And too often it's too easy to hide behind the numbers. So the first thing I challenge organizations is tell the truth. Look at the numbers. Don't manipulate the numbers. See what the problem is. Once you identify the problem, be serious about the initiatives. And so, where they tend to fall short for Black and African American people is, again, they recruit us, but they don't develop us. They don't put us in an inclusive situation. We don't get access to leadership. We don't get access to programs that are specifically designed toward us. And Stacey, this is the first book where I've been unapologetic about talking about Black people, because too often, again, we get lumped into people of color and these other phraseologies that can really, if we're not careful, diminish our presence.
Yeah. Right now, some women might have diminished your presence in front of some women. You talk about ugly babies. You're not supposed to do that, Keith.
Well, I've never seen one, but I hear they exist.
But not to make light of this situation, because you're absolutely right. I love that unapologetically Black is what you're talking about, right? And and that can really, when you're thinking about DE and I, and you see corporate America, well, like you said, we got Jamal here, or we got such and such. They may not necessarily be African American.
Well, and they may or may not be African American. And I hate to say this, but one of the things I really advocate for is that when we do get a seat at the table, use your voice, use your influence. There's nothing worse than a wasted seat at the table. And so, again, even if you are that only one in the room, and I've been that only one in the room, be an advocate
Yeah.
for others. Be willing to open doors for others. Be willing to mentor others, because it can be a lonely existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bobby Henry brings up a point. Bobby Henry is our publisher of the West Side Gazette down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He says, suppose I have a dietary condition and I can't eat what you are serving. So does equity means you will prepare a meal that fits my need?
That's a great question. And that to me falls in the difference between equality and equity, right? Because equity says that you understand and appreciate the differences I bring to the table. The example I give is, equality says everybody gets a 26-inch 10-speed bike to ride. Well, equity says, hey, my kid is 4'2", can't ride that bike. This gentleman over here is handicapped, or those types of, and you have to take the time, if you're serious about equity, to make sure that you're giving people opportunities in light of their needs that's specific to them, to help them be the best that they can be.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the book. Tell us more about the book. There's so much to this. As people listening to you, we could already see that we can go hours talking about this. Unfortunately, we don't have hours, but give us some more information about the book and why it's vital, especially now.
Yeah, this book to me was really birthed in me out of the George Floyd murder, and the awakening of corporate America, in the fact that we need to do something. We have to fix this. We have to address this. And after that, I got contacted by several white leaders and friends saying, "Hey, Keith, what can I do? What can I do?" And I really wanted to name this book "No Excuses," because what I wanted to do was to really demystify and again, just call out what it is. I don't want to hear anymore, we can't find Black talent. There's tons of places to find Black talent. In my book, I tell you where to go find them. I don't want to hear excuses of, well, they're not a cultural fit. Well, let's talk about what that really means, because that really means you want someone who looks, acts, and behaves like you. And so the purpose of this book is to remove the excuses, to say, if you're serious about true inclusion as it pertains to Black and African American people, here are some things that you can do if you're serious. And I say be serious because you have to be both intentional and deliberate. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, but you have to be deliberate in those actions. And this book helps, again, anyone who's serious to say, hey, here are some things I can do to really move the needle.
Well, speaking of someone who's unapologetically Black, who has been trying to move the needle all his adult life, even going back to his childhood when he worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publicists Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey Brown, and good morning to all. And Brother Keith, thank you so much for joining the Black Press of America. And your book is fantastic, and it's right on time with all of the debate and conversation in corporate America about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your book is right on time.
Thank you so much. My purpose is to really let corporate America know that if given the opportunity, the support, we can do and be any and everything we can be in corporate America. There's no reason there's only 4 or 5 Black CEOs. Again, we have the ability, we have the potential. What we need is the opportunity.
Very good.
And really, again, you talk about restructuring underperforming operations and managing industries undergoing rapid technology or competitive change. Keith, what goes into all of this? Really, it's the mindset, as you've been talking about, isn't it? That's the first thing that you really have to tackle, is the mindset.
You have to really tackle the mindset, and in order to tackle the mindset, you got to get proximate to the problem. Too often when I think about DEI, there are organizations who do DEI to a group of people instead of with a group of people. And those organizations that I think get it best are those who bring their Black and brown and African American associates together and say, hey, what's been your experience? What can you tell us? What can you do? But please don't do something to me. Do something with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say good morning to Gregory Muhammad, who just checked in. He sends peace and blessings to the family. Good morning to you, Gregory. And David joined us as well. David Youngblood, always good to see you. And everybody else who's watching, just wanted to shout you out, Michelle Madison. Keith, so what you're finding, or have you found that since George Floyd, we know that since the George Floyd situation, there's been a lot of talk from corporate America. We need to do this, or we want to do this, but are they following through? I think that's the most important thing. Are they following through?
That's a great question, and I will tell you that after George Floyd, there was a lot of hashtag Black Lives Matter. There was a lot of talk, as you say, about what we're going to do. And what I found is there's a good portion of that was just that talk. And my biggest fear out of all of this is that instead of this being a movement, it will just be a moment. But I will tell you that there are certain organizations and certain corporations who are at least asking the question. There are certain organizations that are really digging in and looking in that mirror saying, okay, I have to do better. But again, for a lot of folks, I call it a check the box. And one of the things I do is that I look at a company and I say, what does your board of directors look like? And if I see diversity there, that's okay. But what I really want to see is, what does your senior leadership team look like? Because the board of directors, from a governance standpoint, they don't run the day-to-day operations, right? It is that senior leadership team. And so until you show me diversity at the senior leadership level, until I see diversity where you have Black and brown people reporting to the CEO or on the executive committee, I'm still not 100% sold that you're far enough along the journey on DE&I.
Yeah, and Keith, you have, this message is not just during your book tour or anything, but you've been giving this message for a long time. You've been on the Today Show. You've been everywhere with this, right? We need more Keith Wyches, right?
Well, we need more people who understand that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and it's up to every one of us to uplift each other. Lifting as we climb. And too often, sometimes as Blacks, we are in these positions where we're afraid, sadly, to help or lift another Black brother or sister because of how the optics might look. Well, the reality of it is you're in that seat for a reason. To whom much is given, much is required. And you have to use your voice. And my thing is, if you're going to sit at the table and not use your voice, give up your seat at the table.
Well, hey, I will drink to that. Dr. Chavis?
Yes. Keith, can you let our listeners know from your perspective the importance of the Black press to keep pressing this issue? Long before the tragic murder of George Floyd, there's been an effort to press to get more diversity, more equity, more inclusion. And as you say, in the senior leadership team of these major corporations, with the spending power of African Americans, over $1 trillion every year in the U.S. economy, there should be more reciprocity, more not just give back to the Black community, but reinvestment where these consumer dollars come from.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Dr. Chavez. In fact, in my day job, one of the things I do is I oversee community engagement and support for Walmart. And one of the things that I make sure we do, for example, in Chicago, we were spending roughly $50 million to remodel some stores that were damaged during the civil unrest.
Yes.
I made sure that we had Black general contractors as a part of that equation. In fact, most of that equation. From a Black press perspective, however, I have found that, and I tell corporations all the time, it's not enough to go to the major publications. If you really want to communicate to our people and get your message through our people, you have to use Black press, Black media to do that. And then conversely, Black media, Black press, you are our voice. You are our seat at the table. You are the folks who are in the room when we can't be there. And you can say, quite frankly, things that we can't say. And so we really need you and need the help to drive these messages forward and to help hold accountable those leaders and those corporations. Because again, anything corporate America values, they measure and they hold accountable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
And to go along with that, Keith, also once they've established themselves, and you talked a bit about this, but to go along with Dr. Chavis's comment there about the Black press, how important it is that they continue to recognize the Black press. We've had folks on who talked about how the Black press really was instrumental in the start of their careers. I mean, we had Gabrielle Union talk about that. We had others. Stephanie Mills talks about that. And we got a story from one of our guests yesterday about Prince, who talked about how the Black press was there in the beginning, but how important, because a lot of folks, and I'm not talking about the folks I just named, because obviously they've come back to us. Prince, of course, has passed away, but a lot of folks, they get there and then it's no more the Black press. It's now the New York Times or CNN.
Yeah, the Black press has been instrumental in my career, going back to my days in Cleveland with the Call and Post, highlighting my accomplishments. Later on, Black Enterprise, Savoy Magazine, Ebony. And so it's really important. In fact, even in my book tours, again, it's the Black press, the Black radio stations, WVON in Chicago, the Chicago Defender. Those are the publications. Those are the outlets that best tell our stories. Nobody can tell our story better than we can. And that's why I think the Black press is just so important.
Yeah, and Keith, it was commonly assumed that the change in demographics in America would face corporations to change their employee makeup long before the Black Lives Matter movement. Are those changes no longer strategic drivers for corporate decision makers?
I think if they're woke, as my grandson likes to say, they have to realize that by 2040, we're going to be a majority minority company. And those companies who understand that and are on the forefront of that will benefit from that. If you're in a customer facing or retail phase, you've got to understand that most of your customer base will come from Black and brown people going forward. And so it only makes good business sense. And we see what happens when companies are tone deaf in their advertising or in their product promotion. And when you'll see an ad and you say, there couldn't have been a Black person in the room to approve that. I've seen some crazy things. And so, again, it's important that we have that representation.
Yeah, I think we've all seen some crazy ads that, as you said, then just could not have been a Black person in the room when they did that ad. Keith, so where can folks get your book? And do you have a copy with you? You can show our audience your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. And hopefully you can see it. It's called Diversity is Not Enough, a roadmap to really recruit, develop, and promote Black leaders in America. You can find it right now on Amazon.com. You can go to my website, KeithWyche.com, and also order it as well. You can get an autographed copy that way. But really excited about this book. It's my fourth one. And it's really, me speaking truth to power about if you're serious about promoting Black and brown people, you've got to read this book.
And one more time, the name of that book, and show it again.
The name of that book is easy. It's Diversity is Not Enough, a roadmap to recruit, promote, and develop Black leaders in America.
It's awesome. And just a footnote to our conversation about the Black press, Bobby Henry makes a good point. We can't argue with that point, right? The Black press is a Black-owned business and not just a press release service. We need the paid advertising. Our publishers, obviously, Bobby speaks, he can, in that instance, speak for all of the publishers across the spectrum of the Black press. And of course, Dr. Chavis, you have done some great things for the NNPR and brought a lot more awareness to diversity, equity, and inclusion around the globe. Dr. Chavis, I'm gonna let you close out with Keith Wyche.
Well, I just want to again salute Keith Wyche for not only this outstanding book, which we encourage everyone to get a copy and read it and to pass it on to your children. Everybody in the family needs to read this book. But I also want to say that to corporations, Keith, like Walmart and like Target, like I can just go down the long list. We're trying to realign with those companies right now, quite frankly. And what Bobby Henry said is true, that the lifeblood that keeps the Black press alive is advertising. And, diversity, you're right. The title of your book, Diversity is Not Enough. We need to have empowerment, self-empowerment. We need to own our own businesses, own our own contractors, and we need to be major contractors, not just subcontractors. And the development of our community. Keith, we could just go across the board. There's so much opportunity, but also a lot of challenges in the economic development arena. But leadership is very important, and that's a part of the focus of your book. And we need more leaders who are centered on the overall improving the quality of life of all of our people, not just some of our people, not just a few of our people, but all of our people need that access that you mentioned, that opportunity that you illustrate in your book to move their families and to move our communities forward. So once again, the Black Press of America, the NNPR, we salute you. I know Karen Carter Richards, our chair, and Keith, you'll be interested to know that our whole executive committee of Black women, Black women who own major publications in major cities throughout the country. And of course, Barbara Henry represents us in Florida, and not just in South Florida, but across the state and across the South. We're so proud of our publishers, but we do need that engagement, that interactivity and support from corporate America to stay alive.
Dr. Chavez, I want to give you one example of what I'm most proud of in my role in Chicago. And that is I got to Chicago and I hired a local Black PR firm, the Gemini Group, and Walmart committed a significant part of their advertising budget for Chicago to be paid media, paid advertising to, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, using that to make sure we get our message through. And that was a big win for me to have the organization understand the importance of, no disrespect to the Chicago Tribune or the Sun-Times or anything like that. But we've got to use Black media from a paid perspective as well to get our messaging across.
Absolutely. But thank you for your leadership and for the example that you're setting for others.
Thank you so much.
Keith Wyche, Diversity is Not Enough, a roadmap to recruit, develop, and promote Black leaders in America. Go out, folks, and get that book and learn more about Keith Wyche and this incredible book.